Hey y'all, my name is Taylor. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. So today's video, I'm going to be discussing my top audiobooks for 2024. So I started really getting into audiobooks in 2023. I actually have a recommendations video for that one, and I'll try to remember to link it in the description box in case you want to find even more audiobooks that I would recommend. So I read a whole bunch in the year of 2023, primarily because it was my daughter's first year of life. I was listening to a lot of audiobooks, trying to stay awake, nursing her and all of that. So I read a lot more in 2023, and then 2024, I started off the year strong with some pretty good audiobooks, and then by the end of the year, I really transitioned back into physically reading only. Don't know quite what that was about, just my brain. I don't know. It just doesn't want to do audiobooks right now, but we'll see what happens in 2025. So anyways, long story short, I do have 11 audiobooks that I read in 2024, and I figured since it was a pretty small enough number, I'll just rank those. I'm pretty picky with my audiobooks, so if I start listening to it and the narrator's voice just doesn't jive well with how they sound, or I'm just not connecting well, I will DNF it. And I can't remember of any books that I DNF'd because of the audiobook itself. I do have some DNFs that are, physical reads, but they weren't audiobooks, I don't think, or because they were audiobooks. So I do recommend all 11 books that I did listen to this year, but I did want to rank them for you so you can see which ones were the best of the best, so to speak. So, out of the 11, there were two sets of series. So really, I'm going to just talk about 7 that I'm just going to talk about the first book and kind of summarize for the series. Because they had the same narrator and the same storyline. So in that sense, I'm just going to be talking about 7 audiobooks, and even though I read 11. So these books are not my top of the year as far as like my reading experience goes. This is more of a list of good quality audiobooks, like how well the narrator performed. But also, like, I still had to enjoy the story, and I would recommend the story itself too. But primarily, there's more of an emphasis on how well the audiobook sounded, or how my experience was listening to it. So, long, rambly intro. So, coming in at number 7 out of 7 is Veiled in Smoke by Jocelyn Green. This was narrated by Leah Horowitz. And this is a historical Christian fiction about 2 sisters who they are living in the Reconstruction era, so right after the Civil War. And I think this is in, Chicago. And their father has, what they didn't know at the time, was PTSD. And he is accused of murdering his friend during the time of the Great Chicago Fire. And so it's a story about them surviving and trying to get their dad out of an asylum, because that's where they put him when they accuse him of murdering his friend. There's also a love story in here as well. This was Tammy from the Protagonist Pub's, her book club pick for January. And I did participate in that, so I will say that also impacted my enjoyment of the story too. But as far as the audiobook goes, her dad, I think the main girl is Meg. Her father's perspective, or his voice, wasn't annoying. I do have this thing with female speakers. Sometimes it just doesn't sound quite the same, or it doesn't sound right whenever they make a male voice. But it didn't bother me with this one, so I still recommend the audiobook. Coming at number 6 for me is Tea Room for Two by Susan Page Davis. This is a part of a Guideposts Tea Room mystery series. So it is a cozy mystery series. It's Christian. And this story is about 2 widows. They're cousins, and they decide to open up a tea room. That's their retirement plan, basically. The tea room is in a quaint little Maine house, and you can just really picture the tea room and the cousins and I don't know, you could just picture the setting really, really well, especially with the narrator, because she did the main accents, and she did justice to those to those accents. Like, I felt like I was actually in that space in Maine, just because of how well she did the accents, and she made the accents a little bit different compared to per cousin. So she did a really good job with that. Coming at number 5 is Cold Pursuit by Nancy Mell, narrated by Stephanie Einstein. And this one is a Christian suspense. I almost said romantic suspense, but there's no romance in this particular book. You can see like the hints of one potentially growing between the main characters. It's a man and a woman, but there's not any romance in book 1. But I have yet to read book 2, so I'm assuming that there's going to be romance eventually. It's about 2 ex-FBI agents, a man and a woman, and they decide to open their own private investigation company, and they are hired by this mom who wants them to help find out what happened to her son. Her teenage son disappeared 4 years ago. So it's them trying to figure out what happened to him, but there is also a third perspective, so you get the man and the woman's perspective in this one, but also a third perspective of the killer. And that didn't bother me. I used to. I guess I still do if given the opportunity, which I don't much anymore, but like true crime TV, like, that type of stuff. So it didn't really bother me, but I could see how that would be a little bit too creepy or too much for some people. So just letting you know that is a pressure point for your reading. That is in the book. To me, I just thought it made you more immersed in the story of what's going on, and you're in their head, and can see the thought process, and some mental illness going on, that type of thing. But yeah, the narrator just hooked you in to a already very good story, and just made it even better. At number 4, I have Fragile Designs by Colleen Coble. This one is a romantic suspense. It's Christian, or marketed as Christian, and it is narrated by Karen Peaks. And this one is about a widowed mother, and she has I think it's a boy. I think it's a boy. Can't remember. I also read this at the beginning of 2024. But her husband is killed, and she finds out that he may have been killed for something that was in their house, and she thinks that he was killed for a Fabergé egg, or what she thinks is a Fabergé egg. And so it's her figuring out what happened to her husband and what this Fabergé egg is doing in her house. It was in a trunk from an ancestor. So trying to figure out, it's kind of 2 simultaneous mysteries of the egg and then what happened to her husband. But there is a romance in there too, because of course the guy that is helping her investigate is a police officer. Pretty sure, is he a police officer? I can't remember. He's, at the very least, he's the next door neighbor. I'm pretty sure he's a police officer. The memory, y'all, it's late too. But yeah, there's a budding romance between them as well. The book is set in Beaufort, South Carolina, so points to that because I live in South Carolina, so I'm always excited whenever a book is set in my lovely state. But Karen Peaks did such a good job with the Southern accent, especially the grandmother figure in this book. Whenever she was talking, like, the way she made her sound was so authentic. Like, I could just picture a Southern grandma. Like, it reminded me a lot of my own grandmother. Like, she did excellent with that voice for that grandmother. Like, that was the best performance out of the whole book, was the grandmother's perspective, or the grandmother's voice. So good. Number 3, like I said, I'm just going to say the first book in a whole series, but that would be Recorder by Kathy McCrum, narrated by Taylor Meskimen. So yeah, Taylor, she did all 3 in this series, and I read them straight through, back to back. And she did a really, really good job. You could just, I don't know, I love the story in and of itself, but the Taylor's performance, she made Recorder become even more alive. Like, her voice was just Recorder's voice. But anyways, this is science fiction. It is Christian science fiction, so it is light, so don't be intimidated if you aren't into science fiction, like hardcore science fiction. It's not that. There's a lot of emotions and social interactions, and there's less emphasis on like the sciencey part of it, and more on the human side of it. So this is about a person who is adopted by this entity in society that incorporates technology into their brain to make them act as more of like a computer, like emotionless, like they're recording what is happening so that the human population has an accurate account of what goes on. So she basically has an experience that changes her perspective on the life she's known. So you just kind of need to go into it pretty vague. So it enhances your enjoyment of the story way better the less you know. But I really enjoyed Taylor's performance. She did a really good job. I could picture certain scenes in my head while she was speaking them out loud. The only thing I will say, one caveat to why this wasn't ranked even higher, was that she said one word incorrectly, and I don't like it when people say words wrong that are paid to say words correctly. But I mean, we're all human, it's fine, but I can't even remember what the word was, but I was like, every time she said it, it was not like an every page thing or anything, but it would come up every once in a while. I'm like, no, that's not how you say that word. So that was my control type personality coming out, but it's fine. She still did a really good job. Coming in at number 2 was The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, narrated, this version that I listened to, by David Timpson. And this is a Sherlock Holmes story, and I didn't need to have read any of the other ones. This is my very first Sherlock Holmes book, and I understood everything fine. I was fairly familiar with Sherlock because I've seen some movies and TV shows, so I didn't feel like I missed anything by not reading them in order. But I had sampled different audiobooks on, now it's called Everend, it used to be Scribd. And this is the one I landed on because I thought he did the voices so well. And yeah, he had a different voice for Watson and a different voice for Sherlock, and the story itself is just pretty atmospheric, but his accent and the way he talked for the different characters, they had such distinct sounds and therefore distinct personalities in my brain. And then they also had like a little bit of sound effects, just a tad. It wasn't like a lot or anything, but they had like music in between chapters that was kind of like setting the tone for the chapter, like creepy type, just made you feel like you were in the moors of England in the fog, so Yeah, he did a really good job. Highly recommend that version, narrated by David Timpson for The Hound of the Baskervilles. So number one, again, this is not my favorite book of the year. It's my favorite audiobook. So some of these books, for the audiobooks that I've already talked about, have ended up on my top favorite books of the year. This is a completely separate list, so know that going in. But my favorite audiobook is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, narrated by Tatiana Maslany. And this is one of the best audiobooks that I have ever read. Last year, or 2023, The Hobbit was my top book because of the performance of, oh gosh, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name. But the guy who played Gollum, Andy Serkis, that's his name. Because he sounded just like the characters in the movie. Same thing with this. I'm not going to bother about the synopsis because I think everybody knows what this is. But she sounded like every single character in the movies. Like her performance of Haymitch especially. Oh my goodness. She sounded so much like him. Her voice, like Katniss, she was just Katniss. Like, what? She did such a good job. And I don't know, I just felt like I was watching the movie in my brain, just listening to her talk. It was phenomenal. And yeah, it was more than just reading the book out loud. It was voice acting, which makes sense for her because she is actually an actress. So I was like floored whenever I saw her name attached to this audiobook, because I was like, what? This is a real, like, an actress who is on, the visual screen, and I didn't realize that she did audiobooks. So she did the role that I knew her in before, was Orphan Black, which is a BBC show, and I would not recommend it based on the content, but her performance was very, very well done, because that TV show is about clones, and she made each clone very different and very distinct. Like, she's a very, very good actress, and even in her voice acting, she is very, very good. So, yeah, those are my 7 ranked audiobooks. Let me know if you have listened to any of these or are interested in listening to any of them. If you listened to any good audiobooks this past year in 2024, let me know. I'm always interested in knowing when there is an audiobook version, especially coming up. I'm going to have a newborn, so I'm going to be listening to a lot more audiobooks again. So yeah, thank y'all so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. Bye, y'all.